Good evening, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to, again, the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the greatest people of Nevis, those who will be listening to us on the World Wide Web and who will be following us on YouTube and Facebook this evening. Well, Webo is in somewhere, Hobart, maybe Tasmania, right in capital, and therefore we are here this evening to carry on the show as usual. And those ardent listeners who tune in, do I say religiously, every Tuesday to hear us, we're here again to disseminate information, truthful information, to keep our country and peoples upward and onward. And thus, we ask you this evening early to tune in and call in. So at this particular juncture, let me introduce, beginning with Dr. Patricia Bartlett.
Good evening, Mr. Stanley. Good evening to my other panelists, my other fellow panelists, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invitation to join you. I would just like to take the opportunity, though, just to say a few little shout-outs here and there. St. Kitts, I have my cousin Cinvic, who is always listening to Vaughn on a Tuesday night, and I would like to greet him with a holy greeting. And my friends in St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John's, good evening, you know who you are. Indeed, my husband in the UK, and Moses and his wife, I know they stay up and they listen as well. To the people in the USA, I would like to say good evening, and my prayers with the people in the Bahamas. Good evening again.
Very well. Naya, good evening.
Well, good evening, Mr. Stanley, and a pleasant good evening to the hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio and to my other colleagues. Good evening. It is another Tuesday night where we gather to disseminate truthful information from the mics of Vaughan Radio. But I want to encourage the people to call in because, as I always say, I'm always enlightened by the input from the public, as we hold not the monopoly of knowledge. And of course, it's a show that we share and our opinion, and of course, you know, I'm an opinionated individual. But since you're here, Mr. Brand, I want to congratulate your department on the work you're doing in the area of the Anglican Rectory and the Methodist Church. I think it's a good choice of work and rehabilitation, and it's good that we're maintaining the heritage of the area by replacing those stone wall. I could imagine it would definitely enhance the area a lot. And congratulations again on that particular piece of work that your department is doing. Mr. Stanley, I'm happy to be here again, and I hope we can agree to disagree this evening, and and I do hope that we will agree to, you know, on points that are almost obvious, and of course we approach them with no prejudice. And so sometimes we meet down the road when we deal with, when we, of course, consider the truthfulness, righteousness of certain issues. So I'm happy to be here once again, Mr. Stanley, and I look forward to a good discussion tonight.
Very well. Good evening, Honorable Spencer Bannon. I must say I'm so delighted when you're here. You carry a lot of the load, and some of the answers which we cannot put forth to the public, you sometimes find the right answers. Because that's what our people are listening for, people who can give them the right answers to their questions. So good evening. And of course, those of us who are listening, again, Webo is not here, and thus we are carrying on the show.
Good evening, Mr. Stanley, and a very pleasant good evening to my colleagues around the table. Let me first of all apologize for my absence last week. I actually picked up the message a bit late after the show would have started, so I want to apologize for that. Let me say a very pleasant good evening to our listeners here in St. Kitts and Nevis and throughout the entire Caribbean basin, and especially to those in the Bahamas. I think that we would have all being witnessing the unfolding of the devastation of that dreadful hurricane that went over Bahamas. Certainly our hearts and prayers go out to the entire, all of the people in Bahamas. I believe that it will take a Herculean effort to rebuild that country, but I believe in the resilience of our people, of the Caribbean people, of the African people, that we would have been able to survive many, many difficulties, and we in time would have overcome. So I really want to say to those people who are suffering in Bahamas, my heart goes out to them. Let me say good night to those who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life. Certainly want to wish them a wonderful evening tonight. I know that there are some persons who are down because of the death of a family member, of a friend, of a colleague. Certainly want to use this opportunity to offer my condolences. I hope that they will remember their loved one with fond memories. I want to say tonight, and I thank you for that. I believe that at times we, we take on certain initiatives, and at the end of it, my goal is basically to try and serve the people. And wherever I see that there is an issue, I try to remedy it and try to improve it. And I want to thank you for that. Those kind words in the project that we are taking on the Anglican Church. I have a lot of projects like that, the length and breadth of Nevis, to do. It's going to take time. We just did some work there in the Chicken Stone area, where we would have removed a piece of the rock there at Chicken Stone, and it was a little project in an effort to try and create a safer passage, so to speak, for motorists in that area. That was just another simple but very important initiative. All go down to the safety of the people. So, Edric, it's good to be here. I want to say good night to Ted. He's unable to make it tonight, and I hope he's doing well. Good evening, Mr. Stanley, and it's indeed a pleasure to be back.
Very well, very well, very well. I must say how delighted I am to hear the news that the Four Seasons people or workers will be back on the 16th of September. It is so heartwarming to know that people are working. And it was heartbreaking when we heard that layoffs were imminent, because we know what the consequences are. People don't have enough money to spend, and thus all kinds of problems would emerge. But to hear that bit of news, I'll tell you, it's almost like a new hotel coming to Nevis. You understand? Just because our people again would be back employed and to earn a little more money. And thus, I must say congratulations for the efforts of all, and also the efforts of the Honorable Mark Brantley for the role he has played and continue to play with reference to the furtherance, guidance, and leadership of the Nevis Island Administration for the service, help, whatever you may call it, for all our peoples. So in that regard, again, it is very, very heartwarming to hear that the Four Seasons people, employees, will be back on the 16th, and also the chipping in of the homeowners. Those are people who got a couple of dollars, and it is nice to know that they become, I must say, touched enough to reach into their pockets and to share some of their wealth among our peoples. So congratulations to the Four Seasons and the Four Seasons people and the Nevis Island Administration and all those who, again, helped in this regard. There's been a bit of nice news again regarding the guns that were turned in, illegal guns. seemingly some 43 had been turned in, but we probably have another 43 out there that should be turned in maybe in the next day or two. And I'm hoping that people would continue to respond in this regard to keep our islands safe. And we expounded on the gang somewhat abeyance of those people who have been nefarious and have not cared enough for their fellow men and fellow man, as the case might be. And in that regard, now have got hold of the initiative. Whomever started it, whomever initiated it, I am elated, I'm delighted. I heard of that initiative months ago. And when the person brought that to my desk, I said, well, something has to be done. And I think the youngsters may have just caught their senses or come to their senses to understand that it is, or it was, an ill wind that blew nobody any good. And thus, continue to do what you have to do. I heard the former Prime Minister commenting on it, that it was initiated by the gang members themselves. But whomever, we are now getting the dividends, and in that regard, we no longer feel so frightened about those deaths that continued over a long period of time, but now it is seemingly unabated, and therefore we can breathe a sigh of relief that those people who would have heard that Nevis and St. Kitts, youths, male youths, are killing one another, that we have turned another page, and thus it is good for all of us with reference to population growth, economic growth, social growth, and the whole 9 yards. So I must say, unfortunately, those who had gone on as a result of being at the end of, or the barrel of that gun and got killed, unfortunately they've gone on. But I hope this initiative continues with reference to keeping the peace, and regardless to who has brought it about, we must say congratulations to those who more or less worked tirelessly to bring this effort to fruition. We will, I'm certain, get calls, and I'm inviting people to call in, and let's expand on this particular avenue so that we could lend some help to those who have taken the initiative to bring peace onto the young men in our communities in St. Kitts and Nevis. I have more to put on the table, but I will give a comment or listen to a comment from all our panelists.
Mr. Stanley, you said that somebody brought it before your desk. Is there anything in particular you need to explain about the program? Do you know how it's applied? Do you know more about the program than the average individual?
It's
because
hearsay.
I don't know much about it. I have heard about it. I am very watchful of it. So I don't know if you have more. So I can be enlightened as to how the program is at work, because yes, we are all enjoying the peace, and how it is brought about is quite questionable from my point of view, you know, because I don't see how, and no disrespect to those who have abided with, you know, going forward in a peaceful way and turning in their gun. But it looks like to use, you know, I'm not sure what I want to say, but it looks like we're paying the Taliban to keep the peace, you know, and I'm not sure if that's a working equation. I understand Donald Trump have pulled out of the talks recently, because what we have seen when in an attempt to negotiate with the Taliban are now feeling a lot more empowered, and of course what we see happening is a lot more bombing. So just to apply that equation to our situation here, we know peacekeepers are usually third party, you know, people who come in probably not taking side to maintain the peace to the, for the good of the public. But never before I see a party that is involved in creating war and destruction is being paid to stop do that. And as I said last week, there's something not totally right about it. And I wish that someone can call in with more precise information on the matter, that we can have more understanding of it. Because what I've been hearing, that the troublemakers, the gangsters, are now being paid not to be gangsters anymore, not to be shooting and killing and robbing. I mean, robbing is a different thing, and that probably should be looked at through a different spectacle. But I wish to be enlightened on the issue a little more. But as I say, I can't see how we can be, or any global organization or country can be paying the Taliban to keep the peace.
Well, I would invite a comment from Dr. Bartlett and also from Honorable Spencer Brand on the issue, and then I might come in at the...
I'm not so sure I have much more to add to what I would have said last week, but just in case there are people who are listening or viewing this evening who weren't in tune last week, just for their benefit, I guess I can just share how I feel about it. In the first instance, I don't know, where Naya got the evidence from that they're being paid. But my position was, and I accepted the explanation from the public servants who would have presented a comment in the public media as it relates to that position and the programs that they claim that they were working on in support of the guys. I totally endorse any such program. And I'm one who would have said that peace is not cheap, and wherever you go, you have peacekeepers and they're being paid. I'm not trying to suggest that we should have anybody who is holding us to ransom. That is not my position at all. But what I'm saying is if guys were in a gang and they want to exit now and they want to embrace a different lifestyle, I see no problem. Personally, I don't have any problem with supporting, the efforts. I'm, breathing a sigh of relief because, and I'm not one to think that it's all, all hunky-dory now. Right now, the situation is a situation that I personally like, the status as it is now. In terms of maintaining that, I don't know what programs are in place really to support going forward, that we don't revert to where we were. And I'm just holding my breath, actually. I don't know how sensitive, it is a sensitive matter, and I'm not so sure that everything ought to come to the fore. If the guys are being paid, just like people are being paid for PEP and they're not working, I haven't heard many people who, going around blasting saying, people are being paid and not showing up for work for PEP, and you have these people getting paid. I'm not saying that is where the country should go, to be, rewarding people who are not working. I think everybody ought to be given a fair chance, at earning a living. And if there are programs, and I understand that there are programs for guys who wanted to leave the gangs and they wanted to go into agriculture, whether they're planting ganja or whatever, I don't know what they're planting. I think that we should support them as a country. And I think that though we need to also build on those other social programs in the community that would deter or help to deter, the kids who may be a little wayward, I don't know if enough is being done, but I can't say because I am not hearing enough. But like Naya, where I guess when you have a lot of people who are skeptical, when they don't know all of the truth, and or they think that they don't know all of the truth. Maybe all what we know is what it is. But if guys are being, paid, I like I said, the position for me is that there's a small price to pay for peace.
We'll take a break, and when we're back, the Honorable Spencer Brand would bring to the fore his thoughts on the subject matter.
is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, Vaughn Radio.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. We've got over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Oh, and remember, we are open all day Saturday to serve you better. Call them today at 466-4938.
Yes, we are back, and we are hoping that the viewing audience and the listening audience would be able to call us and weigh in on this issue. I think it is quite timely, and it's an issue of great importance to our nation and its peoples. Honorable Spencer Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Mr. Stanley, I believe that all right-thinking citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis would have been fed up with the continuous criminal activity that we have seen in St. Kitts and Nevis for what, 2-3 decades, where there seemed to have been no end in sight to the issue. Late last year and earlier this year, we would have had the RSS in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And the idea of the presence of the RSS in St. Kitts and Nevis basically was to assist the local forces with combating the scourge of crime in St. Kitts and Nevis. I believe that they would have gone in most or all of the hotspots in St. Kitts and Nevis and probably done some shaking up. I remember we have heard the chatter that RSS came to St. Kitts and Nevis, kicking down people's doors, doing all kind of things. The aim, Mr. Stanley, was to try and see how we can reduce the criminal activity in St. Kitts and Nevis. Today we are seeing a situation where, and I knock on wood, today we are seeing a situation where the level of criminal activity would have declined somewhat. And what we are seeing is a genuine effort by not only the security forces and the government to try and see how best we can not only manage the crime rate, but also to try and persuade those who are involved in criminal activities in what I would call alternative lifestyle, alternative legal ways of earning a living. One of the initiatives, Mr. Stanley, was to try and see how we can get these individuals certain levels of funding to undertake certain gainful employment, farming, mechanic, welding, those kind of activities. A life of crime, Mr. Stanley, is sporadic, and it happens when a person may have gone and robbed someone, and then after a while they run out of what they would have. But the idea is to now and try and allow these individuals to have a steady, they would have put together a number of project proposal for farming and fishing and agriculture and so on. Right here in Nevis, for Culturama, we would have seen, I don't know if much person notice it, but we would have seen two, I don't necessarily want to call them warring factions, but two gangs in Nevis who would have had a booth at the food fair during Culturama down at the Pennis Park. All of that were initiatives to try and see how we can bring about a more peaceful and more harmonious society. This notion that people are paying gangs to keep the peace, I don't know if we want to put it like that, because I don't think that may necessarily be a true interpretation of what the initiative is. The initiative basically is to try and offer them certain funding, they would have written their proposal to do farming, do fishing, and I think I remember hearing that there are persons who are going into things like animal husbandry and those kind of things, and they have to come with their proposal, they have to develop their program with the assistance of community affairs and so on and things like that. So it's a broad spectrum. I am just hoping that it would continue to be a fruit. I'm just hoping that the various communities will continue to see the benefit of it. And I believe, Mr. Stanley, that all right-thinking citizens in St. Kitts and Nevis really want to see this matter of crime be a thing of the past. And for me personally, I believe that all options should be on the table to fix this problem. That is my personal view. Whatever it takes to get rid of this scourge that would have taken so many lives of our young people, our most productive persons. We would have lost many persons over the years. And I think that it needed to come to an end. And whatever options were available, I believe that all options should be examined. All options should be given a chance to see where it goes to. And if this is something that is on the table, if this is something that is working, I'm not saying that it's a perfect system. I'm not saying that it will bring all of the solution that we are looking for, but it is something that was different. It is something that I feel, I understand that I believe, I think it was Barbados who was already in the Federation looking at the program. So people are taking notice of it, and I think, Mr. Stanley, that throughout the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, every day or every week or every month which passes without somebody being murdered, I believe that it increases the level of confidence in the place once again.
Very well. Well, now I threw a pointed question at me, and I can only say, chalk it off to hearsay. At the same time, we can make a comparison and make a determination as to whether or not it was factual. Because when I heard it, I took it with a grain of salt with the expectation that there might be some truth to it, but I just waited and waited. And now we've seen some tangible evidence that something is happening in the positive vein, positive avenue. In this regard, I would say there was some truth to the information that had been brought to my desk since that time. Fewer deaths at the hands of the young men have occurred. So should I say that it was not truthful? Sure, I would say it was truthful in my view. And in that regard, as we mentioned last week, a life that is lost at the hands of a handgun, the hands of a perpetrator who decides that he's going to just take the law in his own hands and would make a determination to end the life of somebody else's, I think it is worthwhile following the initiative, keeping it on track, because there are many benefits that we are deriving from the initiative, whatever you want to call it. Because one, we can now look at an additional area of population growth, because these people who were gunned down, they were in the prime of life. These are people who are able to procreate and add to the number in terms of population growth, which ultimately become productive. They will contribute to the economic life of St. Kitts and Nevis. They'll contribute to the social security system. And you can look at the multiplier effect and make a determination as to whether or not it is something that is worthwhile. I do not know what was meant by the statements by the former Prime Minister with reference to the gang members are the ones. Good evening, you're on Let's Talk. Thanks for the call. Please call back. And as it was said, or as he said, it was initiated by the gang members. I do not know if that was a criticism or a praise, but whomever initiated it, we are now, I think, in a better position with reference to the war has been somewhat curtailed. And as the Honorable Spencer Brand mentioned, that two warring factions set up shop during the Culturama festivities, and I'm certain that the reward that they got from it.
You meant it as a joint venture, or?
Yeah. Food
Okay.
field. They
Both
had
of
a-
them are in the same booth.
Yes.
Okay, well that is good to
At the
hear.
food field.
I applaud those kind of things, and we need to really encourage, this kind of involvement. I sometimes you hear things, and you're not gonna, and the general public, I'm sure, would agree with me. You can't ever get the full truth out of a politician. Mr. Brand, not you. But the truth, we're not gonna get. We would never get the full scope of it, and let us be satisfied with what we have gotten so far. You would always have we have an opposition, and that is their job, they're going to oppose, no matter what it is. The RSS came, they oppose that. The truth came, they want to oppose that, they want to break that down, they want to know how we start, how much money is being spent, they want to undermine it, they want to just negate everything that a present government would do. But we have to accept that.
Dr.
that
Barney,
those
please
kind of
hold your
things will
fire.
happen.
Good evening, you're on Let's Talk. Good evening. Good evening, you're on Let's Talk. Please call back. Continue, Dr. Bartley.
So
Please.
I'm not surprised, because you're going to have one quarter that would always be naysayers, and we have to accept that. It's for us now to weigh the balance. How is it benefiting us as a country? I know I feel a little safer, and I hope I'm not being naive about it, but I do feel a little safer. Maybe. And I'm hoping it's not to my detriment that I lean on my guard on all the rest of it. I'm still going to use the security thing and use the dogs and stuff, and I'm not going to tell anybody to dismantle your security system because everything is perfect. No, because there's no perfect system, places that you think that people have no motivation to do some things, and they do, and so we have to understand that we're dealing with people. We are dynamic, and we can have peace today, and we can have war today. Sometimes it doesn't take much. And I just don't find we're going to have to start working on those other modalities, those things that are going to change the way we relate to each other. People ought to have a right to say what they want to say without you, even if you don't like what they say, accept the fact that they have that right to say it. And don't punch down a man because he said something that you don't like, And that happens sometimes starting in school, in kindergarten. I remember I had this little niece, and she was doing something that she wasn't supposed to do, and when my mother caught her, she's like, "Mommy, I just give you a drop kick." And I'm like, what? I mean, this is a little girl, because people do not like, people to chastise them. People don't like when you call them out on things. And when you start that early, you need to kind of get those, kids away from that kind of orientation. We need to reorient them early so that they don't get, even if you don't like what someone says, respect it and move on. And we have too much of that plagues society as a whole, and if we don't take the opportunity now that we have the lull to start working on those finer things, we're going to run back into the same problem, because people ought to be able to say what they want to say, and you just move on.
Well, I often speak about the equation that so many people feel themselves excluded from. Isn't this an initiative that seems to include people of diverse orientation in terms of what they're on about? Because a lot of the crimes that happen is planned in jail. People in jail sit down and plan all kind of thing because the reality is they feel like when they come out they're going to find it difficult to find employment. And so with such program as Mr. Brand have spoken to, I mean, to me, he brought a lot of clarity to my mind as to what this thing is about, you know, because I know if you know when these people sit in jail, they no longer probably have to think along the lines of further criminal activity to get started, to feed themselves. They can come out and probably put a proposal together, and there'll be funding to initiate such proposal. It's a very good thing because you know I've always been having conversation with people who have been released from prison, and they always have a lot of ideas. I don't know if it's because they're in the sitting down all the time, and workable ideas. But it's the funding. It's the, you know, not just the funding, of course. Some people don't even want to listen to these people, you know. So if there are programs like that can really, you know, bring you back and into the mold of society and make the individual, most importantly, feel that they are part of an equation where they feel a lot of self-worth. That is good. That is good. And I'm not saying this have not been explained out there to the people, but I personally been just hearing the empty shell thing about they're paying the criminals in Sinkits to keep. But if there are social programs, because if you're just paying the criminals, yes, it's going to fall through. This thing about there is peace now is going to be short-lived. Social programs, getting people involved in entrepreneurship, business, giving them responsibility, increases their self-worth. That sounds good. And yes, whoever started the program, I must compliment them. Well, isn't it a program that deals with inclusion? Isn't it a program that deals with making people feel part of an equation? Isn't that what we were talking about all the time through the classes? And that is so engraved in our society. I mean, even today, voters, prisoners should have the right to vote. That's a human right that's been taken away from the prisoners. And as I said, within the walls of the prisons, there's a lot of talented people in there. There are a lot of people who wish and hope to do better on their release. They have a lot of strong economic ideas. So yes, applying a program to their access when they come out of prison. It's a very good thing. It's a very good thing, and let's hope that such programs would have continuity. Of course, somewhere along the line you release them, in a sense that, and I'm not sure the money given to them is loan or grants. Whatever it is, I expect somewhere along the line it would be discontinued for particular. All I'm asking for is serious management of the public funds in that respect, because we see the step and the PEP and whatever else they want to call it. We see such wastage. I hold it there for now.
Another critical component of this whole initiative is, I think we all are aware that some of these youngsters would often have a criminal record, and it is often very difficult for them to find a job. Our society, are not so inclined and eager to employ these youngsters who would have had a criminal record. One of the initiatives is also to try and reach out to the businesses throughout St. Kitts and Nevis, to try and encourage them to give these youngsters a chance, an opportunity. There was a story that was told in St. Kitts by a contractor where one of these youngsters who had a criminal record, couldn't find a job. Representation was made on his behalf to this contractor, to this developer, and he took on the youngster. And from all reports, he's boasting that he's probably the best carpenter that he has seen in a long time. Spoke about learning a skill or trade in prison, and he learned that while he was in prison. And the idea is that we want to, as far as possible, try and encourage the business community, try and give these youngsters an opportunity, a chance. And that is also an initiative that we feel would, in essence, as it were, bring them back into the society, back into the community. And it is bearing fruit, and I'm just hoping that it will continue to along that path where these individuals can develop that sense of independence where they don't necessarily have to rely on getting involved in criminal activity to survive.
But I think they themselves would have hampered their ability to get jobs
Yes.
in the past, because some couldn't go to other
Yes.
jurisdictions.
Yes.
If you were from Brownhill, well, let me not use Brownhill because we never had any gangs, and I hope we never do get any. But if you were from one part that had a gang, you couldn't go to another part, another parish. Let's use the administrative boundaries of parish. In one parish you couldn't go to another parish to get a job because somebody would gun you down. So I think that just creating the environment, creating the atmosphere that people, could go about their
Yeah.
business and do their own thing. I think that makes it much easier for the guys, to be, absorbed, because who is going to want to bring trouble onto their jobs, and I think that was one of the things that a lot of people would have been balking about. It's like, if I invite this guy, give him a chance, then he could endanger the whole crew, because we have heard stories. We all live here. We have heard stories of those kind of things happening. So I hope that the peace is maintained, and I hope we do whatever we can.
So do I. So do I.
I know, like I said before, we're not going to get the whole truth, and I don't have to get the whole truth. I just want to make sure that what we have in place is sustainable. For me, it is always about sustainability. I want us in the next 10 years, and even when we exit here, a lot of us here on the table probably not going to live the next 30, 40 years. But even when we would have left, I'm hoping that we would still have peace. I'm hoping that St. Kitts Nevis would still be a peaceful place, and Miko could feel proud that, we could sing that song again, and feel good about it.
Well, again, I listened to the former Prime Minister, and I was trying to find the angle from which he was talking about it. And I know, being a politician, he obviously was looking at credit and debit with reference to the program, because, of course, when we are in the political season or silly season, we know that crime, of course, will always be at the top of the list of one of the most important factor in our community. And in that regard, how many deaths occurred in the past 4 years under one administration as compared to how many deaths occurred under the other administration? And as a result, if it is now kept in abeyance with reference to the curtailment of the number of people who would have died at the hand of criminals, it simply means that there is a plus and minus factor when you make a comparison. And of course, we are due for another election, and therefore the leaders are jockeying now for positions as to who has done well and who has done not so well. And with this particular issue, I listened and I understood that the money was paid in cash, and it was initiated by the gang members rather than somebody from the administration, whether it is the federal administration or the local Nevis Island administration, as the case might be. But there is no question about it. I believe if this initiative continues and we can keep the peace, it should pay political dividends at the polls, because in my view, this is of paramount importance to, in fact, curtail the number of people who died or who would have died or who will die.
Stanley, I don't know that I agree with you. As a voter, I'm not a politician. And I would not give any politician the credit. I would say it again. As a voter, I would not give any politician the credit. And the reason why I wouldn't give them the credit is because they didn't want to take the blame. So if you cannot take the blame for it, you cannot take the credit for it.
Well, I don't see it that way.
Well,
The
you
reason
don't
why-
see it, I'm
the
just
reason-
saying-
Let me explain why. These people who were gunned down because of gang membership, as the case might be, it was not initiated by the leaders, whether the Prime Minister or the Premier or the Deputy Prime Minister, as the case might be. This was initiated by those people who felt that there's a turf war and the strongest will survive. And therefore, I don't see why a politician should take the blame for people being gunned down because of foolishness.
So how now you want to give them the credit?
Well,
how
I'm
now
say-
you're saying that?
Because there's an initiative.
But how they could take credit for the initiative?
Listen, we do not know the whole truth, but I'm saying to you,
And you'll never
it
know
just didn't fall out of the sky. 43 guns have been turned in, and that, in my view, is a mammoth amount
But
in terms of
everybody on
numbers.
everybody on both sides saying credit goes to the gangs, right?
Uh,
Let us.
I
give
am
them the
saying to
credit.
you-
I don't know that personally. I would go to I would not give any politician the credit.
Well, you wouldn't, but at the same time, I think that they're going to jockey for position to claim this prize, and they will try and keep this initiative going with reference to the saving of lives.
But of course they should.
And in that regard, if it happens under my watch, why shouldn't I say I had something to do with it? You have
Because-
to
because
look at the real facts. The killing had not been initiated by the leaders,
Yes, Stanley, but you
but
miss it.
the initiative that is at hand, that has brought about a truce and the saving of lives, has been brought about because somebody mentioned something, somebody did something, and now we understood, whether it is alleged or it is factual, that money is being passed. The money doesn't come from the sky, if that is true. Somebody, in fact, is working to ensure that the truce or the peace is kept, and therefore it is an initiative that has been on the watch of the current administration. If it continues and the current administration is exed out of office and it continues, it means that the leaders of the other side, whichever who's running the governments, can claim credit for keeping the initiative going. Again, you have to look at the salient point. The killings were not initiated by the leaders, but the truce and the peace, they got something to do with it. Dollars are flowing all over. Cash. Ghost people delivering it? Are they being delivered by ghosts or like manna from heaven?
Well, on the one hand, I don't understand. You're changing your argument again.
I'm not changing any argument. I'm
A while
still
ago
on the
you
same
were-
trajectory.
A while ago, you were giving credit for the initiative that is now going to keep the peace. Yes? And I said, okay, yes, we're going to give credit for the initiatives, yes, that are going to support the peace process. Nothing
Please
is
hold your
wrong with
fire.
that.
Good evening, you. Let's talk.
Good evening. I'm listening to you guys. Good conversation. I wanted to say, though, that if we're comparing whether politicians should get the credit for this situation. If we are without electricity and the government comes in and sets up electricity, or we are without proper roads and a government comes in and gives us proper roads, Yes, we can say yeah, jump up and down and say they did it, but this is their job. The situation with the crime was out of hand and somebody needed to solve it. That is just an example of them doing their job. They have to look after and provide services and situations so that the population can feel at peace. I don't think it's something that we want to jump up and down and say, oh yes, thank you very much for doing your job in that sense at all. I may be wrong. And that's my piece.
Thank you, caller. Well, I do. Good evening, on Let's Talk.
Yeah, good evening, Stanley.
Good evening.
And this question is to Pat. Concerning taking the credit. Now, even if the gang leaders come together and they decide, well, they want to do something together, and then we heard the government, the present government, is putting, whether it's employment or making arrangements so that they can get paid for whatever they're doing instead of shooting each other. I don't see why Pat should think that the government should get the credit for being part of getting something like this together and keeping down the killing that was going on in St. Kitts and Nevis. Because, Stanley, at the same time, we have a lot of famous, writers on Facebook, and they're in hiding right now because, I mean, this was their way of getting out there. And as soon as something happened, you see all kind of red on the thing, the killing and whatever it is, and now they're not going to come out and say, well, the killing is down and whatever it is. Make something, make a different story, right? They were just waiting for something to happen, and in the morning, in the nighttime, 4 in the morning, if you get up, you look on your phone, whatever it is, it's there already because that's what they're waiting for. But now there is a turn. There is no encouragement from them or, some kind of statement, and we're still looking. So that's my point concerning the turnaround of the crime factor in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you, caller.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I'm not so sure what the question was for me though, but what I just want to get it clear. I never said that government should not get the credit for the initiative of providing the support, because initially that's what I would have said. That was my statement last week, the week before, and previous weeks. I'm one of the individuals who would have been sitting here, and I'm sure that mostly the first time you ever heard about them, someone asking
Pat,
for
please
a
hold your
truce would
fire.
have
Good
been right
evening,
here.
caller.
Good evening.
You on Let's Talk?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
to all of your
Good evening.
panelists.
Good evening.
I am not sure that I really want to talk about who gets the credit and who doesn't. What I'm more concerned about is how, while it's good, how did we get here? I think all of the questions rise from the fact that we don't know or don't understand how this happened. And while I understand that there's some risks and some security involved in this, that everything cannot be talked about openly, my trepidation is, what morning are we going to wake up and find that all of this has turned around because somebody's not happy about whatever? You've heard talk about pay, you've heard talk about money, you've heard talk about all kinds of stuff. And so that's my concern is, since we don't know and perhaps may never know, what is it that's there for us to worry about? Or should we be concerned about? This is a great achievement, but the achievement came, it's almost like it came in the dead of the night. How did we get here? You know, how do we maintain this? That's the struggle I have when I think about it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Stanley, I can accept when.
Good evening, you're on Let's Talk.
Hello.
Yes, good evening, you're on Let's Talk.
Good evening. Jack Stanley.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, good evening. I listen to the program, right? But nobody's supposed to take no credit because when you're done shutting up your shop, somebody come and they shoot you. So nobody can take no credit for nothing what you're talking about. Take care.
Thank you, caller. Go ahead. Good evening, you're on Let's Talk.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're hearing you.
Don't listen to your radio. Please listen. Hello?
Hello?
Turn your radio down and please talk. You're on Let's Talk. Caller, are you there? Okay. Dr. Bartlett, go ahead.
So, just to wind it back a little bit, I never said that government ought not to take a little credit, and I'm just going to give them a little credit for the initiative, the programs that are supporting the peace. I applaud that. What I'm saying is you can't take credit for the fact that we do not have the criminal. You know, you were saying that you're thinking that, you know, you want to ascribe credit for this person now because things are good. You know, when things are bad, nobody took, you know, the credit or took the blame. So if you can't take the blame, you cannot take the credit. And that is just my principal position.
Please hold your fire. Good evening, you are Let's Talk.
Good evening, Mr. Stanley. Good evening to the planet.
Good evening.
What I'm trying to understand, the money business is not the issue. It's the young men that really is the issue right now, because those are the ones that make the change. Because if you look around what's going on, I worked with them for 20 years as a prison officer, and this thing what they're doing is not easy to change their life around. So I don't think money can help. The guys need respect. Society needs to respect these guys more. I respecting them what they're doing. It's not the money concern right now. It's the guys that we need to respect. Society needs to respect them more. Good night.
Thanks for the call. Good night. Good evening, you are Let's Talk. Please call back. Well, there is a big prize.
Can I just finish though?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I think we had all settled a couple of years ago before the truce. We had all settled on at least one position. The position was that crime was not a political issue. It was a social issue. So the fact that we're now putting social programs in place to make sure that we keep the peace is a no-brainer, you know? And if we continue bouncing it around, then you'll always hear from the opposition things that are going to just try to destroy the peace that exists. Let us keep it out of that domain, out of the political domain. Do not give any politician any credit because they didn't want to take the blame.
Good evening, caller. You want Let's Talk?
Good night to you and the panelists.
Good evening.
Good night.
To caller, the male caller. He started wrong. From the time he started wrong. But he still can't agree with the lady there on your panel. He said if the guys them agree to come together, so who you give the credit? He said that, you know, if they agree to come together, who you give the credit? But he talking because he started wrong, right away he started wrong. And I mean I have to call because I depend on the lady there. Good night, that's all I want to say.
Good night.
Thank you, caller. But the thing is that the most important factor is that the person who has the idea of killing somebody else simply because he's a gang member and that person may have killed somebody for him or from his gang, should also know that it's only a matter of time before he too will lose his life.
But we don't need to go back there, Stanley.
And
We
therefore,
don't need to go back there and
we
vilify
must
them
look at
all over again,
all the pluses and make a determination as to why the peace must be kept. And I would say this, our nation continues to bring revenue, get revenue, earn revenue, and that revenue will continue to be shared if it is alleged that money is being paid by the government. We're not sure as to what the truth is. But if money is being passed, the government has revenue coming in, and therefore let us keep the peace. If we got to pay, let's pay. The cost of a life is less than what we're paying. The life itself is worth more than what we're paying. Let's take a break, and we'll come back.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. We've got over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. Call them today at 466-4938.
Good evening, you're on Let's Talk. Good evening, you're on Let's Talk. Thank you, please call back. Well, I've driven on a little piece of road at Craddock Road and I tell you it is so nice. I've driven on another piece over at Cotton Ground and it is so nice. So I'm just going to put a plug in to tell the Prime Minister, send over another 200 million. Good evening, you all. Let's talk.
Yes, good evening, Stanley. Again, I'm calling back. I think Mr. Brand, Senator Brand, the government minister, should get a round of applause also because he also in a program dealing with that one since 1998. So he's in a program called the Circle of Peace Youth Program. And he's doing a very good job. So I think he deserves applause for that. Good night.
Thank you, caller. Yes, as I was saying, that whatever the reasons are, people somewhat, because I've heard it in the street regarding this 200 million that was sent over, and I'll tell you, we need all of it because there are a lot more roads. And the best thing about any country is to be able to drive throughout to see the various areas. And if you have good roads, it's just nice. Like I've said, I've driven on the little piece at Craddock Road and I've driven on the piece over at Cotton Ground. And boy, it just feels good. So please send over another 200 million for Mr. Prime Minister. We can do it over here. And don't let them tell you that he's sinking people money. It's all our money. Anyway.
Mr. Stanley wanted to go ahead, Mr.
Go ahead.
No, when Mr. Stanley started, he was really talking about the reopening of Four Seasons on the 16th of September. Is that true?
The workers go back to work.
The workers go back to work?
Yes.
Okay.
If I said reopening the workers, I did mention the workers.
Okay.
But if I said reopening, it was a poor choice of word.
The idea is to go through a complete retraining, retooling process.
Okay. All right.
Clean up and all kind of, well, that is a part of the whole process. But Mr. Stanley, I want to go to this 40 plus.
Good evening, caller. You on Let's Talk?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes. The first question I would ask is, what really is the initiative? I mean, we don't really know what it is. I mean, we have all kind of euphemism programs for at-risk youth, all sorts of names. But we are still trying to define exactly what it is. Okay? To me, there is too much secrecy surrounding this. And we don't know what the oversight is like. Okay? Everyone is in favor of giving youth a second chance and reintegrating them into society. I mean, that's easy to get behind. My question for the panelists would be, would they still be behind it if it was indeed a case of the gangs being paid to keep the peace? Okay? Is peace at all costs where we should be aiming? Okay? I mean, no responsible government, I would think, would admit to doing that. Okay? I mean, no government can just reorder the rules of society. We can't just be seen to be rewarding, and this is not just errant behavior, but criminal behavior. What message are we sending to the young people who kept the straight and narrow if we're going to be, giving criminals special treatment, right? Reintegrate the gang members by all means, but do so with existing programs, with no special secret program that maintains the gangs, and that is important. Whatever negotiation took place must have involved dismantling the gangs. We don't want a separate justice system for a special clique in society, right? So I hope everything is being done in a lawful and constitutional way. And I totally agree that it should be kept out of the realm of politics. I know that would be hard to do. But we have reached a place, as someone on the panel mentioned, where we all agree that crime should be kept out of politics, okay, out of the political domain. So this idea of credit is immaterial. I think the methods used by both governments were pretty much the same, carrot and stick approach, okay. I personally feel that the gangs were essentially worn out and worn down, okay. No peace was possible until they decided to end this mutual suicide pact and reconcile. Okay, and now that we are finally at a good place, I'm saying that we should end the secrecy, let's dismantle the gangs, get their weapons and their sources. That's also important. Okay, a lot of guns were in the place, and for all we know, they only gave away half the guns. We don't know. Okay? And so information about criminal activity in the past is also important. You know, it's somewhat disquieting to know that we apparently know who was responsible for the mayhem, and there would be no justice. Huh? Maybe an amnesty could cover everything, but some sort of explanation or some sort of closure must be given so that this thing don't happen again in the future. Okay? That I think is what's important. Okay, sure, we can do short-term things and end it, but we want it to be permanent. We want the peace to be permanent. Okay? So there are a lot of dynamics still at play here. But I think and hopefully we're still working on working out the details. But I don't think it should remain a secret program. In a democracy, anytime you have this secret thing, a lot of things can go wrong. There has to be oversight. Okay, and that was that's my main concern. All right, but the peace is good. I hope it stays. But let's do things properly. That's my input.
Carla, before you go,
Yeah.
what's your opinion of something like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Something like what they had in South Africa.
In South Africa?
Yes. What's your opinion of that?
Well, that's what I think is needed, actually, for closure. The thing is that within the law, if, for instance, in that Truth and Reconciliation Commission meeting or whatever, you have clearly identified who did what, is there going to be a general amnesty? I mean, that could possibly happen because this was obviously a war. We now know what was causing the problem, apparently. Okay? And it seemed to be warring factions. In a war, I guess you can have truces and peace, and nobody gets blamed for the killing. So an amnesty is definitely possible. But what I'm saying is it has to be within the law and constitutional. And while you're on Truth and Reconciliation as well, there's a lot of it that should happen in other areas, okay? Because that might have been the example that the youth used in their gang warfare thing, the political tribalism and the vindictiveness and all the victimization and so on that went on. That might have been the origins of this, okay? And so maybe you should have it extended to that as well, okay? That criminal activity is easily identifiable, but there's also white criminal activity as well, okay? And definitely there's a lot of nefarious things that go on in the political arena that a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would probably put an end to. So, but it's a good start. I mean, it's good that we're at this place. What I'm saying is, suppose for instance, the government change tomorrow. What is it? Do they know who to negotiate with? Do they know where the money is coming from to support these programs? Those kinds of questions, I mean, it should not be a secret. I don't like this, and that's the problem I have actually with the administration. There's no openness and transparency, and therefore no accountability, right? You have to know these things. We don't want tomorrow the names and the faces change, and then we right back where we started. That is not how to operate a government. We need government in the sunshine. That's my opinion anyway.
Thank you, caller.
Okay, then.
Interesting observations presented by the caller. I understand, and I made just a few little jottings here. He was talking about dismantling the gangs. I don't know how you go about dismantling people who have become friends. I don't know what he proposes to do to dismantle the gang, so to speak. These are cliques. I mean, you have people who gravitate to for whatever reason. If they feel like as individuals and they need to get the support for that they need to move away from those influences. If the influences are no longer bad, I don't see any reason why I would give up my friends if the influences are not bad. So we have to try to start working on the influences in the lives of these people. I don't know that there's a blueprint for something like this. I don't know it has been done any other place that we can just take it and say, well, this is the way it ought to be done. It ought to be scripted this way. So I don't understand. Well, I can't really appreciate where he's coming from as it relates to how is this thing going to work. Things are being tried. It's good for us to document what is being tried. If there are programs, if we realize that one program A is working, and it is that the guys need to be more involved in agriculture because that takes up most of the day, and so they're tired at the end of the night and they can't do anything else but stay home, or it means, you know, I'm just saying, you know, these things. As it relates to truth and reconciliation, I have publicly said here on Von Radio, and I would say it again, I believe in reconciliation. I think, though, we are not enough of a mature set of people to handle the truth, you know, and I think maybe that's why politicians lie to us so much, or we lie to each other so much. Let me put it that way. Let me take it back, because I don't have anything against politicians. But I don't know that we are mature enough at that level to handle the truth. Some things sometimes better left unsaid. It done pass, let it go. We need to learn how to let things go. And if we don't reach the point where we can let things go, the truth is not going to, you know, hearing the truth is not going to help us. It's going to harm us. Because they just have not learned how to let things go, sometime in the future is going to reap that same thing back up. And as it relates to rewarding these guys, I mean, I don't know, you look at it as a reward, I look at it as something to, you know, encourage. Semantics, you might say. I don't know. I would say that we're just encouraging better behavior, and encouraging people, you know, to be more responsible and getting involved in meaningful work. I heard a proposal once that someone would have said, in order for us to get our politicians not to succumb to bribery, then you ought to pay politicians more. So on the one hand, you know, you can pay politicians, you know, more not to take bribes, and that is a crime. And nobody have anything, you know, to say about that. I haven't heard it, you know, as if people object to that. Politicians are being rewarded for not taking a bribe. You know, how does that work out? And now you have guys who, on the other end now, far end of the spectrum now, you say don't give them anything, you know, because that would encourage. I don't know where you reconcile that, or how we do that.
To be honest, I listened to the caller, and I feel that you have to separate the apples from the oranges. And in this regard, I know that what has been happening among this particular group was complete lunacy. These people were irrational. They have no way of critically analyzing situations, and thus they preyed on the weaker ones to join their gang in order to bolster their power base. Now, based on what's been said to them, because these people, they live in homes, they got fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, extended families, and they've been spoken to over and over and over as to the right pathway, yet this went on unabated for, as Honorable Spencer Brand said, maybe 30 years. Now they've come to their senses. And one of the prizes is that it's alleged that they're being paid, but the bigger prize is to save your own life. Why other youths have not gone down that pathway? Because they've seen a better way of life, being on the straight and narrow, and ultimately become productive in society and don't become a menace to society. So, what we call truth. Truth. Not the truth, but the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I do not think it is relevant in this regard for this particular group. Politically, yes, it happened in South Africa. Here, it could happen. We might also need that because of the political tribalism. But this particular menace was brought about and maintained by the gang leaders who ultimately met their demise. And they got to keep the gang going. But we have now found it possible that a solution has been brought to the fore, and the killings have now been subsided. Let's see if we can pump some sense into them. Keep them in school. Teach them to be critical thinkers. Show them that there's a better pathway in life. Church, school, home, and the institutions that keep us on the straight and narrow and make us better citizens in our society. I hope they have come to their senses. And ultimately, if they come to their true senses, the money part would go away. We would no longer have to pay them if the allegations are proven to be correct, that they're being paid. Life is sweet. I was somewhere a couple of days ago with another gentleman, and two ladies passed and say, those two gentlemen, they're having the best time of their lives, simply because we are not teenagers. And I'm saying to you, do what we have done. Work hard, learn, study, get yourself gainfully employed by upgrading your skills. And I now understood that the office of the prison, the head office of the prison, has now teamed up with AVEC and other institutions to see if they can get these prisoners learn a skill that when they come back out, as the Honorable Spencer Brand mentioned, they can be reintegrated into society. But the people who are doing this, they know clearly that there's another way and there's a right way, but they want to maintain their power base. Well, thank God that something has happened and we are now reaping the reward of a truce and peace. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
Sugar City St. Kitts. Keep it sweet. Keep listening to Vaughn.
Yes, we are back. We brought to the fore last week the bill that was withdrawn in our federal parliament, and we had a comment from the Honorable Mark Brantley as to why it was withdrawn. I mean, we were here scratching our heads because we didn't have any material to work with reference to what really occurred, more than we knew that the bill was withdrawn. But based on what was said over the airwaves of Vaughn Radio, the Honorable Mark Brantley said that the bill needed to be discussed more extensively and more work needed to be done. And therefore, we are hoping those people who are listening and viewing us call and let's have a conversation. Some of the topics we have put on the table, we need to have a conversation with you, some of the listeners and viewers. Our numbers are 469-1700, 469-1616.
Mr. Stanley, before we go to the matter that you have put on the table, I just want to go back to the number of firearms that you would have indicated that were collected. I want to, Mr. Stanley, use this opportunity to encourage those persons who still are in possession of illegal firearms to please do the right thing and turn them in. I don't believe that it would be beneficial to you as an individual to.
Are they paying for that, by the way?
If who paying for the guns?
Yeah.
I'm not certain.
No, in some places they have buyback. You know, you bring in
I am honestly not certain if they have been. But the idea is to try and get these illegal firearms off of the street, and I want to use this opportunity to encourage those persons who are still in possession of illegal firearms to do the right thing, turn them in, can, leave them with your pastor or your teacher, or, leave them at a particular place where, the idea is to try and make the society a much more peaceful and more safer place. And I really want to use this opportunity to encourage those persons who are still in possession of those illegal firearms to do the right thing and turn them in.
I just wanted to point to the fact that in all this, it looks to me like justice has been pushed under the table. And I think the caller before kind of makes some reference to that in a sense, because, and I agree with him, there's a degree of secrecy here, which is, and I think this is what kind of have the public a little skeptic about all this. And I probably can understand that. We are talking about people who know what was going on, who was a part of what was going on. What about justice? It looks to me like we were so thirsty for peace that a short moment of peace have completely filled our desire. I am not saying that I am not optimistic, or shouldn't be, but it's too short-lived to have a party about.
Don't kill it.
And the issue of justice still remains. You cannot just push the law under the table. And some of these people supposed to be wanted individuals? What about the so many cases that has been unsolved? I think what the caller has been saying is that there's a degree of secrecy that tends to derail our, our clear vision of what is happening, other than the fact that there's peace right now. A lot of people think this gang thing is a bit of shallow water. It's very deep. Family has been hurt in a big way, in a far-reaching way. So as for me, whereas, I haven't been counting the days or months, but I feel left out in feeling like there is no peace. Because everybody's saying that we are all at peace now, we are all at peace now. Just before January 1st, there was quite a lull, maybe even longer than what we're experiencing now. But the issue of justice is fundamental still. People talking about truth and reconciliation and all that, like we were dealing with governments and things. Whatever. But the issue of justice to me shines a bright light over this. And it makes us think about the scale on which we are placing these programs and the law. It's a very important, it's very important to me. And there is something that's not coming together here, because you cannot just set aside the law, okay, just to have a moment of peace. This has a political ingredient. Again, whatever it is, we're enjoying a good moment now. But if things change, as the caller pointed out, to me the ends are not meeting. But let's enjoy it for now.
Mr. Stanley, if I may, my heart goes out to you, Nair. I know you've had personal loss, and there are a lot of people out there who have had personal losses. And this is not in any way to, to lessen the hurt. I could only imagine that you have. I really empathize with you on this. And I'm hoping that I'm not going to sound insensitive by the next statement, and somehow I just think I'll get myself in trouble, but I need to say it anyway. At some point, we have to be realistic, though. We know that we didn't have a good record as it relates to detection of crime. We didn't have a lot of people who, and we still don't have a lot of people who would have seen things and who would come forward to say anything. And so, like I said, I feel it for you, but it's unfortunate that we are where we are now.
It's not me.
I'm not trying to suggest that you push it aside, and people are going to, of course, need closure. You're going to need justice because you had personal loss. But I just want you to, I'm searching for words so that I don't sound insensitive. But sometimes we have to have trade-offs in life, and this is a hard one. This is a very hard one. You're not likely, based on the record that we had in terms of solving crime, especially the homicides, it's not likely that you would have gotten justice anyway. And that is just the harsh reality of the situation. So this is a trade that we're going to have to make now between what we would have lost, what we ought not to have lost. It is unfortunate that we got here. Remember, but it just sometimes comes down to strategy. Years ago, it was always a military way of approaching these things. And I think now we're recognizing with some push that is not always the way to go. You don't solve a war by getting involved in the war. And I think that to some extent was happening. I hope I don't get myself, I always get myself in trouble anyway. But we had created a conundrum right here, and the morass that we were in, I'm glad that we're at this point now. And I'm hoping that people would be able to get to the point that they could reconcile their loss. I don't know, by maybe just looking at the reality of the situation.
Yeah, but when I said that, I was not even thinking about me. I never even asked the question who killed my son, to be quite honest. I'm just really talking from the perspective of the law, because, if you can throw your hand up and say the public prosecution then can put everything aside and don't no longer investigate, what do you ask these people? How far do you dig into their past?
To what end, though? Be realistic. To what end is we weren't even making 7%.
Well, probably to the development of the database, which is so important in solving crime going forward. But as I said, let us enjoy the peace at the moment. But it's not about me at all. It's not about me and my experience. But because so many things have happened before that and happen after that. And in talking to people who were involved in the gang, it's not just you may not support a gang if you have an idea that Tom was the person who have killed your son. You're so hurt and you're sorry for Tom. Next week you hear somebody killed Tom, and for some reason you're less affected. And I'm not saying that is good, but you're less affected because you can reflect upon the fact that, hey, Tom killed my son. And so it's a deep thing that have a chain reaction that goes deep into families, okay? And we must not look at it lightly because we see 2 months of no killing. That is the point I'm trying to make. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, but what is the value, though, in going back? I'm just asking, what is the value when you cannot get the program to run the way it should? In a utopian situation, somebody kills somebody, and the person who saw would come forward, give evidence, and then they're going to scurry off someplace. They have to go live someplace else. That is not going to happen. It's unfortunate, but that is the stark reality of the situation. That's not going to happen. We have to get to the point where we're going to just have to let some things go. eyes, we would never ever have peace. We would never have peace because our justice system is not a justice system where we were getting like 50%. Let's say we were getting a 50%
Well, it's
detection
not a
rate.
justice system.
I mean, if we were getting a 50%, I wouldn't even make too much of a fuss about it. But to what end? Why are we gonna, harass these young fellas who now want to turn around? They may not even be implicated in anything. I'm just being facetious. But why you want to put them through that when they said, okay, I want to turn around? I mean, you remember the story with Paul and Saul, in the conversion? We have to allow a conversion like that. We have to make provision for that in the society and just understand that some things that have passed, there's no value really in bringing them forward.
Stanley?
Mr. Brown, we wanted to say something.
Yes, I too don't want to come across as being insensitive. I believe that all of us would agree that this crime situation in St. Kitts and Nevis has certainly far become a clear and present danger for St. Kitts and Nevis. And I really don't believe that anyone in their right mind would want to just forget about justice, because there is a lot of pain in St. Kitts and Nevis. There's a lot of pain in St. Kitts and Nevis. Like I said, you probably wasn't even thinking about yourself. I too would have lost a nephew to violent crime. Myers, I think all of us, around this table.
Amen.
That also hit home more than you could even begin to imagine. We have reached a point where we have to begin to embrace some harsh and bitter realities if we really want to move forward. With that said, notwithstanding that there is still this thirst for justice, but I believe that even though some people may not know who was responsible, the question could be asked, can they forgive and can they move on even though that they are not aware of who? And that is something that individuals would have to search themselves deep, whether they can, in the absence of justice. Is that something that someone is prepared to accept, even though that no one was given a judgment or had to pay for? But with that aside, I believe that this period that we are in is a welcoming pause, and I'm hoping that for the sake of St. Kitts and Nevis that it can become the norm. I remember when St. Kitts and Nevis was touted as the freest nation on earth. I remember many years ago I had a Jamaican friend who came here, and we left my office and just pulled the door and didn't lock it, and he said, "You're not locking your door?" I said, "We don't lock doors in Nevis." Sadly, we have reached a stage in Nevis where we not only lock the doors, but we have on kind of things on the doors and windows.
Security.
And have changed, and we are hoping that while we may not get back to that level or that sense of freedom, that we can make some quantum leap in efforts in getting back to that. I know that the pain runs deep, because there are times when, in reflection, you wonder and you question and you thirst for that sense of justice. There has always been that desire for justice, and I don't believe that anyone would want to just push the thirst for justice and the hurt that has been inflicted on many persons throughout St. Kitts and Nevis aside. It's simply because they want to see a peace and a calm. There's always going to be that hunger for justice.
The silly season is fast approaching, and I believe this issue is going to be front and center and hence we just might get some truth coming from maybe both sides. And the third factor, the gang members themselves. We know exactly that we've got a society and nothing is really static, everything is dynamic and changes are occurring all the time. And in that regard, those members who have now, who are now rethinking as to what the modus operandi might be, we are hoping that they would begin to think that this society requires their full cooperation with reference to doing what is right, because the benefit that is there is that it will be a society that will provide employment and ultimately enhance the quality of life for all of us. So we must look forward for that kind of prize and work together and begin to look at things that might derail or give us a bad name or bad publicity, as the case might be. Let's bring our country back into the fold. Good evening, caller. You on Let's Talk.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah, I'm just calling to just inform everybody listening about a St. Kitts and Nevis Independence flag raising that we're having in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the U.S. I know you get a lot of callers that listen from all over, but I just wanted to share the information.
In Pennsylvania?
Yes, in Pennsylvania, yes. So we're going to be in Philadelphia at City Hall this Friday, September 13th, in celebration of the independence. So we just wanted to make people be aware of it and invite folks to come out from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And that will be, again, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, City Hall, 1401 JFK Boulevard. My name is Kyla Herbert. And if anybody has any questions, I could be reached at 267-257-9625.
Can you repeat the number, please?
Can you repeat the number, please, so that we...
Sure, 267-257-9625.
And repeat the location, the address.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. It's the Philadelphia Hall, and it's 1401 JFK Boulevard, and that's the zip is 19107, and right in the main part of downtown Philadelphia for our independence flag raising.
Very well. Very nice.
Okay, yeah, we got to keep the culture going and let people know that there are petitions and divisions. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thanks for
Yes,
the call.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Happy Independence when
Bye.
it comes.
Go on.
We'll take a break and we'll be back.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. We've got over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Oh, and remember, we are open all day Saturday to serve you better. Call them today at 466-4938.
Good evening. We are on Let's Talk. Okay, we are back. And I just want to bring to the attention of the listening audience, viewing audience, that sometimes these small islands can produce leaders that are global in nature. Because when I look at Boris Johnson, who is now running Britain, and Donald Trump, who's running the United States, I guarantee you, and I will repeat it, that we got people in these small islands who got far better leadership skills with, of course, a little tip of compassion, and would guide nations such as the United States, Britain, onto better things. Because the confusion that Boris Johnson has brought about, which means that he's going to exit from the European Union, whether or not they got a deal, I think is just craziness. How can people of that, at that level, could be thinking this way? They have lost their mind in Britain, and seemingly they have lost their mind in the United States, but I hope that they will make good in this upcoming election and dump Trump. A comment from our panelists, please. I do not know if you people have been following, but...
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know how you want to disrespect the vote of the referendum. Yes, leave with or without the deal, because will you ever get a deal in your favor? You have left the European Union, you have left the European market, and still you want to be such a player because, yes, of course, you need your services, which was fundamental in Europe. London is, a big service provider. But would you ever get a deal that totally favors you? And that's the question. I'm happy to be looking at what's going on in England, because I see democracy, being played out to the fullness, and at the same time you recognize the loopholes, because Boris, really, he's the prime minister, but he's only been elected by a couple thousand. When I say a couple thousand, about 200,000 conservative members. He doesn't really have a mandate for the people. And we always tend to be talking about the Westminster system, but I don't think our system down here walk in parallel with the Westminster system as well. I mean, you look at how often leaders resign to maintain their pride, to maintain their opinion on matters. The concept of ministerial responsibilities is always at work in England. Your department fails and the minister have to walk. I mean, these are the kind of things we probably can take a page out of. But apart from all that, I see democracy being played out to the fullness. Whether England voted to leave the European Union was a mistake. But how could we even think of it as a mistake? It was a referendum, But I think what is expected of the British Parliament is probably a lot more than the European Union can offer, because a no deal simply means that they're not satisfied. A no deal simply means that they're not satisfied.
Well, I'll come in after you.
What I find interesting in this whole saga, basically, is the voiceless debate that they've been having in the House. I look at it as an exercise in, and I spoke about democracy, but what I like is the question and answer session where basically anyone can get up and ask a question, and right there on the spot you basically have
You
to...
like accountability, that's what it's called, that's what we don't have.
You have to give an answer, and I like that. But the new Prime Minister, I don't believe that the new Prime Minister, when he's in the quiet moments and so on, that he really believed that he could have delivered this thing after all that would have transpired before him becoming Prime Minister.
He may have realized that, a deal means to be satisfied, and the British public and British government just won't be satisfied.
Well,
I don't understand how they couldn't understand that it's not going to work.
Well,
that is the thing that baffles me.
Well, it's not going to work. The
doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out.
With America, the biggest trade deal is just being signed with America. It's the nature of the politics there. would a CCM, I mean, how much people in CCM would decide not to support a government notion, or, put forward, or this is how the politics is being played out. And it looks to me like there's a lot of spitefulness in these parties because there's a lot of egos. Boris wanted to be prime minister a long time, and they did give Theresa May a hard time.
A very hard time.
A hard time.
He expected that he
I
would
mean,
come and
everything
get
could have gone well
walk
on
in the park.
Theresa.
You got to be crazy.
The thing is, what I find interesting is that he has not brought anything different. If it is that you say, okay, push the woman out of the side because she's not getting it done, but you now come and you have no idea, well, nothing different to offer. Because if you're going to negotiate, you can't go with the same negotiating line that she had and expect just because you're a guy that they would just, turn over everything. But what I find interesting in the whole thing, though, and I don't think that we should lose that, is that around the world, you have a lot of people who are becoming nationalists, and that is getting a popular push.
Yep.
And I think that is behind most of the upheaval that we're seeing in the various places. In Italy, we've seen it played out. We've seen it played out in England. We've seen it in the US. Wherever you go, people just don't want too much of any other people, other people's to come to their place. So we ought to watch what is going on, because right now you realize the situation in the Bahamas. Bahamas is a part of CARICOM, but they're not entertaining any free movement with y'all. Because the thing is, you have to be realistic, and sometimes that's why what I find is lacking. If it is that you have a situation in a country where things seem to be good, everybody's gonna, if once they can have access, everybody's gonna want to go there. And soon you're gonna find that what was good is no longer good. You're compromising the integrity of the whole system that you have if you do not put in place those measures that would control immigration. And I think that is what the crux of the matter is. Immigration ought to be controlled. I believe in globalization, really, but I have to be realistic. So I say, I don't mind if you have quotas, if you don't need this, based on whatever parameters you're measuring, whether it be GDP or it be whatever you want, to pull out. And measure it against that. If you say if we fall below, 2% growth, then we can only allow 10 people to come. Have some measures in place that make sense. Because once you go over that and you start impinging on the rights of the people in your country, because right now we're not any different from anybody else. Everybody's have the same rights as us. We just happen to be here in Nevis. Being a Nevisian does not give you anything special, And people need that kind of distinction. If I'm from a country, I need to know that I have something that only us, entitled to.
I don't agree with you, though.
I'm just saying.
I don't agree with you.
Well, you don't have to.
Being a Nevisian is something special.
So Trump immigration policy
No,
is okay.
it's not. But you have to defend the core values of the people, and you can't compromise everything.
So
for
you can
politics.
understand very well Trump immigration policies.
No. That is just racist. If it is that you have a policy, and the United States have had the policy, if you have bright people, they would just do the brain-drain thing. They would take the bright people and bring them over and settle them and all the rest of it. And but when you start saying because you have people from this kind of whole country and that kind of whole country because they're dark skinned, I don't, his policy is not a rational policy, at least not how I look at it. But I'm just saying that we need to start looking at what we're proposing. And CSME, we're going to have to take a critical look at it and see, because Antigua would have opted out of, well, not opted out, but would have begged off sometime, in 2009, I think that they had begged off. They said, okay, we can't take the people who are, the
servants,
right, domestic
workers.
right, we can't take domestic people. And they did that for 5 years, and then after that they came back and said, well, okay, things are not much better. Could we get an extension on that? And they gave them 4 more years, I think 4 more years, no, 3 more years. And so you end up with and in the interim you had one little phase there, and so you end up with 9 years not participating at that level that you had promised that you would. And one of the, I'm not sure what his name was, I would like to give you credit, but in any event, the point he was trying to make was, if my government is indebted to the organizations or the institutions inside of the country and cannot pay, and extend it beyond, and we can't pay our obligations to regional and international organizations either, how then could you expect us to be able to absorb all these people? Give us a break. And that was their premise, for asking for a break. And there are times So, economics is cyclical. There are times that you're going to need a break, and you must factor that into the, negotiations. You can't just say all Haitians will come now because, Haitians are part of CARICOM now. But you can't just say because they're much more than us.
It's a strange thing as how nature operates, because the Bahamas operate in a prejudicial manner over a number of years, not wanting people to come to the Bahamas.
That's not true.
But now, when you look at it, we all have to chip in and help them out because that's just the right thing to do. But based on how nature works, sometimes, unfortunately, nature balances everything out. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk program this evening. It repeats tomorrow at 10 a.m. and listen to On the Mark with the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow at 8 p.m. We do appreciate all the callers this evening, and we invite you to listen next Tuesday night when we'll be back here on the Let's Talk program. Thank you and have a good evening.